The camera lingered on the crowd, pausing on a smiling couple in the stands. I wasn't paying much attention, just another playful moment during the game. But something about the woman caught my eye. Her laugh, her familiar profile. I leaned closer to the screen, my breath hitching. It couldn't be. But before I could fully process what I was seeing, my phone buzzed with a notification, jolting me back to reality. That's where it all began. Let me take you back to how I got here. Sundays had always been sacred in our household. They were the one day of the week when everything slowed down, a chance for Amanda and me to just relax. I'd spend the afternoon in front of the TV, watching my team, while she usually pottered around, doing her own thing. That particular Sunday felt no different, at least at first. I woke up to the smell of coffee and the faint hum of Amanda's favorite morning radio show playing in the kitchen. She was standing by the window, sunlight streaming over her auburn hair, sipping her coffee like she didn't have a care in the world. "Morning," I said, leaning against the doorframe. She turned, flashing me the smile that had won me over years ago. "Morning, sleepyhead. Your game's at 1, right?" I nodded, noting how cheerful she seemed. It wasn't out of character. Amanda was always the more upbeat one between us, but there was something extra in her demeanor that day. She seemed light, as if she had a secret that made her giddy. At the time, I chalked it up to the sunny weather. We chatted over breakfast, the usual banter. She teased me about how invested I got in the games, especially since my team, the Wildcats, hadn't had a decent season in years. I laughed it off, pretending to be offended, and we fell into that comfortable rhythm that long-term couples have. By noon, I was on the couch with a beer in hand, the pre-game commentary droning in the background. Amanda popped her head in from the hallway, holding her purse. "I'm heading out for a bit," she said. "I need to pick up a few things for the week." "On a Sunday?" I asked, surprised. She shrugged. "Better now than during the work rush. Plus, I could use the fresh air." Fair enough, I thought. Amanda had always been a planner. She hated crowded stores and preferred to get ahead of things. I didn't think much of it as she kissed me on the cheek and headed out the door, her heels clicking on the driveway. The game started, and I got lost in the action. The Wildcats were playing better than usual, and I was caught up in the rare excitement of them actually having a shot at winning. Amanda texted me around halftime, saying she'd gotten caught up chatting with an old friend she'd run into at the store. "Take your time," I replied, feeling generous in my good mood. By the third quarter, Amanda still wasn't home, but I didn't care much. I figured she'd grabbed a coffee with her friend or stop somewhere for a quick bite. I was too engrossed in the game to worry about it. And then it happened. The camera cut to the crowd during a timeout, a playful moment to highlight the fans. The kissing camera zoomed in on a pair of teenagers, then a middle-aged couple sharing a laugh. That's when I saw her. I froze, my beer halfway to my lips. The camera lingered on a couple sitting close together. The woman looked just like Amanda. No, it wasn't just a resemblance, it was her. Same auburn hair, same laugh, same little habit of tucking her hair behind her ear. She was smiling, leaning into the man next to her. His arm was draped casually over her shoulder, his fingers tracing lazy circles on her arm. And then, right there on live television, she turned and kissed him. Time seemed to stop. My team's logo flashed on the screen, the commentators laughed at the display, and the crowd cheered, oblivious to the bomb that had just gone off in my living room. "No," I muttered to myself. "No way." I grabbed the remote and rewound the clip, my heart pounding harder with every second. There she was again, clear as day, locked in a kiss with a man I didn't recognize. For a moment I thought I might be losing my mind. Maybe it wasn't her. Maybe it was someone who just looked eerily similar. But the way she moved, the way she laughed, it was unmistakable. My hands started shaking as I took a picture of the screen. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The Amanda I knew, the Amanda I'd spent the last 10 years with, wouldn't do this. She just wouldn't. I sat there, stunned, as the game carried on in the background. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, snapping me out of my daze. It was a text from Amanda. Just finishing up here. Do you need anything from the store? I stared at the message, my mind racing. What was I supposed to say? That I'd just seen her kissing another man on national television? That I was sitting here, trying to reconcile the woman I thought I knew with the one I'd just seen? Instead, I typed back, "No, I'm good." Because I wasn't ready yet, not ready to believe it, not ready to confront her. For the rest of the game, I sat there in silence, barely aware of what was happening on the screen. When Amanda walked through the door later that afternoon, smiling and holding a grocery bag, everything about her seemed normal. Too normal. "Did they win?" she asked, setting the bag down on the counter. I forced a smile. "Yeah, they did. See?" she teased. "Told you they'd pull through eventually." I nodded, my throat tight, as she walked past me and disappeared into the bedroom. My mind screamed at me to say something, to demand answers, but I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I sat there, staring at the picture on my phone, trying to figure out how my perfect Sunday had turned into the worst day of my life. After Amanda went to bed that night, I stayed in the living room. The picture of her on the screen burned into my brain. I must have replayed the DVR recording a dozen times, pausing, rewinding, zooming in, convincing myself it wasn't real. The first stage was denial. It had to be a mistake. Maybe it wasn't Amanda. Maybe it was just someone who looked like her, a cruel coincidence. But no matter how I angled the screen or squinted at the pixels, it was her. I couldn't deny the way she laughed, the way she tilted her head just so, the way she casually tucked her hair behind her ear. I spent hours sitting there, frozen in a fog of disbelief. My mind kept circling back to one thought: this isn't her. Amanda wouldn't do this. This isn't us. But then the cracks in my denial started to form. In the quiet of the night, with only the hum of the fridge in the background, little things began creeping into my mind. The late nights at the office. The sudden need to run errands alone. The way her phone always seemed to be on silent, flipped face down on the counter. I remembered the time she'd come home smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't mine. When I'd asked her about it, she'd laughed and said it was from a coworker who'd hugged her at a meeting. At the time, I believed her. Why wouldn't I? We had a good marriage. We weren't perfect, no one is, but we had 10 years of love, trust, and shared memories. I never thought she'd lie to me. Now, every little moment that didn't quite add up was rushing back, each one sharper and more painful than the last. By the time I finally crawled into bed, it was past 3 a.m. Amanda was fast asleep, her breathing steady and peaceful. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering how she could look so calm while my world was falling apart. The next morning, I was a wreck. My stomach churned, and I could barely touch my coffee. Amanda, on the other hand, seemed as cheerful as ever, humming to herself as she packed her bag for work. "Are you okay?" she asked, pausing to glance at me. "You look tired." I forced a smile. "Didn't sleep well." She tilted her head, concerned. "You're not coming down with something, are you?" I shook my head. "Just a rough night." She leaned over and kissed my cheek. "Get some rest. I'll see you tonight." And just like that, she was gone, leaving me alone with my thoughts. The day dragged on, each hour heavier than the last. I couldn't focus on anything. I kept pulling out my phone, staring at the picture of her and the man on the kissing camera. I even considered calling in sick to work, but I knew I wouldn't be able to concentrate there either. Instead, I stayed home, pacing the living room, running through every possible scenario. Maybe she had a twin I didn't know about. Maybe it was a stunt for some kind of promotion. Maybe. But the maybes were just excuses. Deep down, I knew the truth. By the time Amanda got home that evening, I was a mess. My heart raced as I heard her keys in the lock, followed by the familiar click of her heels on the hardwood floor. "Hey, babe," she called out, setting her purse on the counter. "Dinner plans tonight, or are we doing leftovers?" I swallowed hard, gripping the edge of the counter. My mind screamed at me to confront her right then and there, to demand answers. But when I looked at her, her bright smile, her easy demeanor, I froze. Leftovers are fine. I mumbled. Great. I'm starving. She didn't notice my shaky voice, or if she did, she didn't let on. She reheated some pasta, chatting casually about her day as if nothing had changed. I couldn't bring myself to say anything. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, staring down into a void, knowing that one wrong step would send me plummeting. Later that night, as she showered, I found myself standing in the hallway outside the bathroom door. The sound of running water echoed through the house. I clenched my fists, trying to summon the courage to burst in and demand the truth. But I didn't. Instead, I walked into the bedroom and grabbed her phone from the nightstand. It was locked, of course, but I knew her passcode. It was our anniversary. My hands trembled as I unlocked it, half expecting to find nothing, half dreading what I might uncover. Her messages were clean, her call log uneventful. But when I opened her photo gallery, my heart stopped. There, hidden in a folder labeled Work Pics, were selfies of her and the man from the game. They were smiling, laughing, their faces pressed close together. Some were innocent enough, just pictures of them in an office setting. But others. One photo showed them at what looked like a restaurant, glasses of wine in front of them. Another showed them sitting on a park bench, his arm draped over her shoulder. I stared at the screen, my vision blurring with tears. There was no denying it now. The woman I loved, the woman I trusted more than anyone in the world, was cheating on me. The sound of the shower stopped, jolting me out of my daze. Panicked, I closed the app and put the phone back exactly where I'd found it. Then I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to calm my racing heart. Amanda walked into the room a few minutes later, wrapped in a towel, her hair damp and dripping. "You okay?" she asked, glancing at me. "You look pale." "I'm fine," I lied, my voice barely above a whisper. She smiled and kissed my forehead. "Get some rest, okay? You've been off all day." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat as she turned away and started getting ready for bed. That night, I lay awake again, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. The evidence was clear. The truth was undeniable. But what was I going to do about it? By the next morning, I felt like a live wire, taut and ready to snap. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine, not after what I'd seen. I replayed the night before in my head, her smile, her casual demeanor, the way she kissed me goodnight like nothing was wrong. How could she act so normal, knowing what she was doing behind my back? I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I was going to say, but I knew I couldn't stay silent any longer. Amanda was in the kitchen when I finally worked up the nerve. She was scrolling through her phone, sipping her coffee, and humming along to the radio like it was any other morning. "Amanda," I said, my voice tighter than I'd intended. She looked up, her brow furrowing slightly. "What's up?" I hesitated, the words catching in my throat. Part of me wanted to blurt everything out, to shove the evidence in her face and demand an explanation. But another part of me, an irrational, desperate part, still hoped she'd deny it, that she'd laugh and tell me I was being ridiculous, that there was some perfectly innocent explanation. Instead, I said, "Where were you on Sunday?" She blinked, surprised by the question. "Sunday? I told you, I ran into Sarah at the store, and we grabbed coffee." "Why?" It was the lie that broke me. Hearing her say it so casually, so convincingly, made something inside me snap. I crossed the room and slammed my phone down on the counter, the picture of her and the man from the kissing camera glaring up at us both. "Then explain this." For a moment, Amanda just stared at the screen, her face completely blank. Then, to my utter disbelief, she laughed. "Are you serious?" she said, shaking her head. "You think that's me?" "It is you," I said, my voice rising. "Don't even try to deny it, Amanda. I know what I saw." She rolled her eyes, crossing her arms over her chest. "Matt, come on. Do you hear yourself right now? You think I was at a game with some random guy while you were sitting at home watching TV?" I clenched my fists, struggling to keep my composure. "I don't think it, I know it. That's you, Amanda. I'd recognize you anywhere. Her expression hardened, her tone turning icy. Wow. So now I have a twin running around? Or maybe you think I've mastered the art of being in two places at once? Don't, I said, my voice low and trembling. Don't make this about me. Just tell me the truth. She stared at me for a long moment, her jaw tightening. Then she sighed, shaking her head. Fine. You want the truth? That's not me. It's someone who looks like me. Congratulations, Matt, you've officially lost your mind. Her deflection was so blatant, so dismissive, that for a split second, I actually doubted myself. But then I remembered the photos in her phone, the undeniable proof that she was lying through her teeth. What about these? I said, opening her photo gallery and pulling up the pictures of her and the man. I shoved the phone toward her, my hands shaking. Explain these, Amanda. Her face paled for a fraction of a second before she composed herself. Are you seriously going through my phone now? Jesus, Matt, that's a new low. I had to. I snapped. Because you won't tell me the truth. She sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose like she was dealing with a petulant child. Okay, fine. You want to know who he is? He's a co-worker. We had a few work events together, and we took some pictures. That's it. Work events? I repeated, my voice dripping with disbelief. You expect me to believe that these... I gestured to the picture of them at the restaurant, the one with his arm draped over her. Are from work events? She threw up her hands. Yes, Matt. God, you're acting like I'm having some torrid affair. Do you even hear how ridiculous you sound? Ridiculous? I said, my voice rising again. You're on camera, Amanda. Kissing another man at a game. That's not work. That's not a coworker. That's a betrayal. Her eyes flashed with anger, and she stepped closer, her voice low and dangerous. You don't know what you're talking about. Oh, I think I do. I shot back. You've been sneaking around, lying to me, making me feel like I'm crazy when I know exactly what's going on. Amanda's demeanor shifted in an instant. The defiance in her eyes softened, replaced by something almost like pity. She reached out, resting a hand on my arm. Matt, she said, her voice quieter now. I think we need to talk about us. I froze, caught off guard by the sudden change in her tone. What's that supposed to mean? She sighed, stepping back and crossing her arms again. It means, maybe we haven't been as happy as we pretend to be. Maybe I've been feeling distant. And maybe you have too, even if you won't admit it. I stared at her, my chest tightening. So that's your excuse? You're not happy, so you cheat on me? Her face hardened again. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that maybe if we were more connected. No. I interrupted, my voice trembling with anger. Don't you dare put this on me. Don't you dare make this about our marriage when you're the one sneaking around. She opened her mouth to respond, but I held up a hand, cutting her off. You know what? I'm done. I'm done listening to your excuses, your lies. I've seen the proof, Amanda. I don't need you to admit it, I already know. For a long moment neither of us spoke. The air between us was thick with tension, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on both of us. Finally, Amanda let out a long, slow breath. If that's how you feel, she said quietly, then maybe we should take some time apart. I stared at her, stunned. Time apart? That's your solution? She shrugged, her expression unreadable. Maybe it's what we need. Maybe it'll give us some clarity. Her words felt like a punch to the gut. After everything, after all the lies and the betrayal, this was how she wanted to end it. Fine, I said, my voice cold. If that's what you want, then go. But don't expect me to be here when you decide to come back. She didn't respond. She just turned and walked out of the room, leaving me standing there, shattered and furious. As the door slammed behind her, I realized something. Amanda wasn't just trying to lie her way out of this. She was trying to shift the blame, to rewrite the narrative so she wasn't the villain. But I wasn't going to let her. When Amanda walked out that day, It felt like the world had gone eerily quiet. The slam of the door echoed in my ears long after she left, and I stood frozen in the kitchen, staring at nothing. It wasn't just the betrayal that gutted me. It was the audacity of her lies, the way she twisted the truth and tried to turn it all around on me. The person I thought I knew, the woman I'd shared 10 years of my life with, wasn't the person standing in front of me anymore. As the hours passed, the initial anger began to simmer down, replaced by an ache so deep it felt like my chest might cave in. Every corner of the house reminded me of her. Her favorite blanket draped over the couch, the scent of her perfume lingering in the bedroom, the half-empty mug she'd left on the counter that morning. I couldn't stay there. The walls were closing in, suffocating me with memories of what we used to have. Grabbing my keys, I drove aimlessly for hours, letting the roads guide me. I passed the park where we used to walk on lazy Sunday afternoons, the diner where we'd had our first date, the tiny coffee shop where she always ordered the same overpriced latte. Each landmark felt like a knife in my side, a reminder of the life we'd built together, and how quickly it was unraveling. Eventually, I found myself parked in an empty lot by the lake. The water was still, the surface reflecting the muted gray of the overcast sky. I sat there for what felt like forever, my hands gripping the steering wheel as I tried to process everything. Anger surged again, sharp and sudden. How dare she do this? How dare she lie to my face, pretend like it was all in my head? The images of her and that man, their stolen moments together, played in a loop in my mind, each one more painful than the last. But beneath the anger was something worse, a hollow, gnawing sadness. I loved her. Despite everything, despite the lies and the betrayal, I still loved her. And that realization only made it hurt more. By the time I got home, it was dark. The house felt different, emptier somehow, even though nothing had changed. I sat on the couch, staring at the blank TV screen, replaying our argument in my head. Her excuses, her deflections, her refusal to admit the truth, it all felt so calculated, so cruel. I thought about calling someone, my brother, my best friend, but every time I picked up my phone, I hesitated. How do you even begin to explain something like this? Hey, so, my wife of 10 years is cheating on me. Any advice? Instead, I turned to the one outlet I could rely on, the internet. I found myself on a relationship advice forum, scrolling through post after post of people sharing their own heartbreaks and betrayals. Some stories were eerily similar to mine, while others were so outlandish they felt like fiction. But what struck me most was the outpouring of support, the way strangers came together to offer advice, encouragement, and empathy. Before I knew it, I was typing out my own posts, pouring my heart into the keyboard. My wife of 10 years is cheating on me. I caught her on a kissing cam at a sports game with another man, and when I confronted her, she lied. She said it wasn't her, even though I have photos of them together on her phone. Now she's saying we need time apart, but I don't know what to do. I feel lost, broken, and so angry. How do you move forward from something like this? I hesitated before hitting post, my finger hovering over the button. Putting it out there, sharing my pain with strangers, felt like admitting defeat. But at the same time, I couldn't keep it bottled up anymore. I needed to hear from someone, anyone, who'd been through this and come out the other side. The responses started pouring in almost immediately. I'm so sorry you're going through this. No one deserves to be treated that way. You need to take care of yourself right now. Don't let her manipulate you into thinking this is your fault. Start documenting everything. If this leads to divorce, you'll need proof. Some of the advice was practical, some emotional, but all of it made me feel a little less alone. These people didn't know me, but they cared enough to share their thoughts, to remind me that I wasn't the first person to face this kind of heartbreak, and I wouldn't be the last. The next few days passed in a blur. Amanda didn't call, didn't text. The silence between us was deafening, but I wasn't sure I even wanted to hear from her. What would she say? More lies? More excuses? I threw myself into work, trying to keep my mind occupied. But every time I sat down at my desk, my thoughts drifted back to her. I couldn't stop picturing her with him, The way she'd smiled at him, the way she'd kissed him so freely in front of thousands of people. And then there was the question I couldn't stop asking myself: why? Why had she done it? Was it something I did? Something I didn't do? Was there some sign I'd missed, some moment where everything started to go wrong? The not knowing was the worst part. One evening, after another long, restless day, I found myself going through the photos on her phone again. I don't know what I was looking for, maybe some kind of explanation, some clue that would make it all make sense. That's when I noticed something I hadn't seen before. In one of the pictures taken at the park, there was a reflection in the window of the building behind them. It was faint, but it was enough. I zoomed in, my heart pounding. It was Amanda and the man, sitting close together, laughing. But in the reflection, I could see another figure, a woman, standing a few feet away, watching them. Who was she? And why did she look familiar? The question gnawed at me, sparking a new kind of curiosity that pushed through the fog of sadness and anger. For the first time in days, I felt a sliver of purpose, a need to dig deeper, to find the truth. Because whatever was happening, it was bigger than I realized. The image of the reflection haunted me. It wasn't just a passing thought. It was an itch I couldn't scratch, a loose thread that refused to be ignored. Who was the woman in the reflection? Why had she been standing there, watching Amanda and that man? For days I obsessed over it. I zoomed in and out, trying to glean more details from the blurry image, but there wasn't much to go on. The figure was faint, her face partially obscured by the window's glare, but there was something about her posture, her stance. It felt oddly familiar. I couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't a stranger. Determined to find answers, I decided to retrace Amanda's steps. I started with the park, the place where the photo had been taken. It wasn't far from our house, a spot we'd visited together countless times. But now, it felt different, tainted by the memory of her betrayal. The park was quiet when I arrived, the crisp air carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. I walked the path slowly, trying to piece together the scene from the photo. I found the bench where Amanda and the man had been sitting, their laughter immortalized in that picture. I stood there for a moment, staring at it, imagining them together. Turning around, I looked for the window in the background, the one with the reflection. It belonged to a small cafe across the street, its glass panes glinting in the sunlight. That's where the woman had been standing. I crossed the street and stepped inside the cafe, the bell above the door jingling softly. It was a cozy place, the kind of spot Amanda would have loved. A handful of customers sat scattered around, sipping coffee and typing away on laptops. The barista, a cheerful woman in her 20s, greeted me with a warm smile. "Hi there! What can I get for you?" I hesitated, unsure how to explain why I was really there. "Actually, I was wondering, do you remember seeing this woman here recently?" I pulled up the photo on my phone, showing her the reflection. She squinted at the screen, her brow furrowing. Hard to tell. The picture's a little blurry." "I know," I said, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. "It's just, really important. She might have been standing outside, looking in." The barista glanced at the window, then back at me. "You know what? There was a woman standing out there a few days ago. I remember because she looked kind of out of place. Like she was waiting for someone but didn't want to come in." My heart leapt. "Did you notice anything else about her? What she was wearing? Where she went?" She thought for a moment, then shook her head. "Sorry, that's all I remember. I was pretty busy that day." It wasn't much, but it was something. I left the cafe and stood outside, staring down the street. Where had the woman gone? And why had she been watching Amanda? I decided to cast a wider net. Over the next few days, I visited other places Amanda frequented, the grocery store, her favorite boutique, even the gym she occasionally claimed to go to. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I kept my eyes open, hoping for some kind of sign. Then, one evening, as I was scrolling through Amanda's social media for clues, I saw her. It was an old post, buried deep in Amanda's timeline, a picture from a work event a couple of years ago. Amanda was in the center, smiling brightly, but it wasn't her face that caught my attention. It was the woman standing off to the side, partially cut off by the frame. It was her. The woman from the reflection. I stared at the photo, my heart racing. She looked familiar because I'd seen her before, not just in the reflection but in Amanda's life. She was a coworker, or at least she had been. I dug deeper, scrolling through Amanda's posts, piecing together the fragments of their connection. The woman's name was Rachel. She and Amanda had worked on a project together a few years ago, and based on the pictures, they'd been friendly, maybe even close. But something didn't add up. If they were friends, why had Rachel been watching Amanda and the man from a distance? Why hadn't she approached them? The more I thought about it, the more uneasy I felt. Was Rachel involved in this somehow? Was she complicit in Amanda's betrayal, or was she trying to warn me? The next day, I made a decision. I needed to talk to Rachel. It took some effort, but I managed to track her down online. She was still active on social media, her profile filled with posts about her job, her hobbies, and her dog. I sent her a message, keeping it simple. Hi, Rachel. This might sound strange, but I'm Amanda's husband, Matt. I think we need to talk. It's about something I saw recently, and I think you might know more than I do. Please let me know if you're willing to chat. I didn't expect a quick response, but to my surprise, she replied within the hour. Hi, Matt. I was wondering if you'd ever reach out. I think it's time we talked. Her message sent a chill down my spine. What did she mean by that? And what exactly did she know? Rachel agreed to meet me at a small diner on the edge of town, far enough from the places Amanda and I usually went that I felt safe from prying eyes. I arrived early, my nerves on edge. A million questions swirled in my mind, but none of them felt complete. When Rachel walked in, I recognized her immediately. She looked different than she had in the photo, older, wearier, but there was a determination in her eyes that made it clear she was here for a reason. She spotted me and walked over, offering a hesitant smile. Matt, right? I nodded, motioning for her to sit. Thanks for agreeing to meet me. I wasn't sure you would. Rachel sat down, folding her hands on the table. I've been debating it for a while, honestly. But after what I saw, I knew you deserved to know. What did you see? I asked, leaning forward. She took a deep breath, her expression pained. I guess I should start from the beginning. Amanda and I were co-workers a few years ago, and we got along well enough. But after that project we worked on, we didn't keep in touch. At least, not until a few months ago. My stomach tightened. What happened a few months ago? She reached out to me. Said she needed someone to talk to, that she was struggling with some things in her marriage. At first, I thought she just needed a friend, so I agreed to meet up with her. But it didn't take long for me to realize that wasn't the whole story. Rachel hesitated, looking down at her hands. She told me she was seeing someone else. At first, I didn't believe her. Amanda always seemed so devoted to you. But then she started showing me pictures, telling me about this guy. His name's Jeff. Apparently, they met through her work, and things escalated quickly. She was careless about it. Almost like she didn't care if people found out. Hearing his name was like a punch to the gut. Jeff. The man who'd been stealing my wife away from me. Why are you telling me this now? I asked, my voice tight. If you knew all this, why didn't you come to me sooner? Rachel looked up, her eyes filled with regret. I didn't know how to. It wasn't my place, and I didn't want to get involved. But then I saw them together at the park. I'd gone there to clear my head, and I happened to see them. They were close, like a couple. And that's when I realized how far it had gone. And the reflection in the window? I pressed. That was you, wasn't it? She nodded. I didn't know you'd see that. I didn't even think about it until you messaged me. But yeah, that was me. I was standing there, trying to decide if I should say something. I couldn't bring myself to do it. I didn't know how you'd react, or if you'd even believe me. I sat back, the weight of her words sinking in. This wasn't just about Amanda's betrayal anymore. It was about the web of lies she'd spun, the people she'd dragged into her mess. Why now? I asked again, more softly this time. Why tell me all this now? Rachel hesitated, then reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. She slid it across the table to me. Because I think you deserve to know the whole truth, she said. And because I can't stand by and watch her keep hurting you. I opened the folder, my hands trembling. Inside were more photos, candid shots of Amanda and Jeff together at various places, a restaurant, a hotel lobby, even the sports game where they'd been caught on the kissing cam. There were also screenshots of text messages between Amanda and Jeff, their words filled with the kind of intimacy she'd once shared with me. It was all there, laid out in black and white. Proof of her betrayal, her lies, her complete disregard for the life we'd built together. I didn't take those, Rachel said quickly, as if reading my mind. I got them from someone else, someone who knows Jeff. They thought you should see them. Who? I asked, though I wasn't sure it even mattered anymore. She shook her head. That's not important. What's important is what you do next. I stared at the photos, the texts, the undeniable evidence of Amanda's infidelity. My chest felt like it was caving in, the weight of it all threatening to crush me. Rachel reached across the table, her expression earnest. Matt, I know this is a lot to take in. But you deserve better than this. You deserve someone who respects you, who values you. Don't let her make you feel like this is your fault. Her words hit me like a bolt of clarity. For weeks, I'd been drowning in self-doubt, questioning everything about myself and our marriage. But now, with the truth laid bare, I realized something. This wasn't my fault. Amanda had made her choices, and now it was time for me to make mine. I thanked Rachel for her honesty, for having the courage to come forward when it would have been easier to stay silent. As I left the diner, the folder tucked under my arm, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. The truth was out, and while it hurt more than I could have imagined, it also set me free. It was time to move forward. Without her. Leave a comment with your thoughts on the story. And subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new interesting stories. See you soon.